Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnu Bhad, Paramahamsa Parivraja Kacharya Hasto, Saraswati Sri Samad, His Divine Grace, Abhay, Charanara Vinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON BBT, Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. Sri Sri Gauranitai Ki. Sri Sri Radha Govardhana Dari Ki. Sri Sri Krishna Balaram, Sri Giriraj Govardhana Ki. Sri Caitanya Caritamrita Ki. Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktavinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktavinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktavinda. Reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi-lila, chapter 13, entitled The Advent of Lord Chaitanya, text 117. Tricky Bengali. We'll have to give it a try. If anyone has a better meter than mine, please chime in. Dovadanya dila shishe kaila bahu ashishe. Chira jive hayo dui bai. Dakini sankini haite shanka upajila chite. Dare nama tu ila nimai. Duva, fresh grass. Danya, paddy. Dila, gave. Shirshe, on the head. Kaila, did. Bahu, with much. Ashishe, blessing. Chira jivi, live long. Hayo, become. Duibai, two brothers. Dakini, Sankini, ghosts and witches. Haite, from. Sanka, doubt. Upajila, grew. Chitte, in the heart. Dare, out of fear. Nama, name. Thuila, kept. Nimai, Lord Chaitanya's childhood name. Derived from the neem tree. Yeah. Derived from the Nima, and in brackets, Nimba tree. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. She blessed the newly born child by placing fresh grass and paddy on his head and saying, quote, "May you be blessed with a long duration of life." But being afraid of ghosts and witches, she gave the child the name Nimai. Please repeat. She blessed the newly born child by placing fresh grass. And paddy on his head and saying, "May you be blessed with a long duration of life." But being afraid of ghosts and witches, she gave the child the name Nimai. This is Sita Thakurani speaking here. The consort of Advaita Acharya. Purport. Dakini and Shankini are two companions of Lord Shiva and his wife, who are supposed to be extremely inauspicious, having been born of ghostly life. It is believed that such inauspicious living creatures cannot go near a neem tree. At least medically, it is accepted that neem wood is extremely antiseptic, and formerly it was customary to have a neem tree in front of one's house. On very large roads in India, especially in Uttar Pradesh, there are hundreds and thousands of neem trees. Neem wood is so antiseptic that the Ayurvedic science uses it to cure leprosy. Medical scientists have extracted the active principle of the neem tree, which is called margosic acid. Neem is used for many purposes, especially to brush the teeth. In Indian villages, 90% of the people use neem twigs for this purpose. Because of all the antiseptic effects of the neem tree, and because Lord Chaitanya was born beneath a neem tree, Sita Thakurani gave the Lord the name Nimai. Later in his youth, he was celebrated as Nimai Pandit, and in the neighbourhood villages he was called by that name, although his real name was Vishvambara. Omagana Timanandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmanitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master has very kindly come, forced open my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. I offer my most respectful obeisances unto his lotus feet. Vande Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gaudadaya Pushpabanto Chitro Sandhu Tamonado. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, who are just like the sun and the moon. They have arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Gauda to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauda Twisi Namaha. Very famous verse of Srila Rupa Goswami, often quoted, where the Venerable Goswami identified and glorified Lord Chaitanya as the most munificent incarnation of Krishna. Why? Because he was freely distributing what no other incarnation had ever given. and that was love of God, Krishna Prema. And in this realm we see if a person has a lot of money and they freely give away some of their money, a lot of their money, to a close relative, well, that's certainly noble. But if a very wealthy person finds a homeless person on the street, someone they don't know, and comes up and just offers them a substantial amount of money which will solve all their problems in life, then that's, of course, the meaning of magnanimity. So that is how Rupa Goswami glorifies Mahaprabhu, that he doesn't discriminate who is high class, middle class or low class. If anything, his mercy comes down most abundantly to those who are most fallen. For that reason he's known as Patita Pavana. So, of course, Prabhupada is sharing some wonderful information, as I think we all know. Srila Prabhupada in his household life for several decades earned an honest livelihood as a pharmacist, a chemist. And Prabhupada shared on occasion many delightfully charming pastimes in regard to his earlier life. Though it's generally that sannyasis don't say too much about their former lives, but Prabhupada on occasion would share fascinating incidents from his earlier life. And Prabhupada was vastly learned in different sciences. He knew, for example, the Latin names of many trees, and he would identify them on morning walks in different botanical gardens in different parts of the world. And he knew countless formulas because he was manufacturing and distributing his own pharmaceutical products. And possibly one of the most delightful is when in the 1930s Prabhupada was living in Prayag for a number of years, and he had his Prayag pharmacy. And he became very good friends with a godbrother who'd actually taken initiation from their spiritual master Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati some years earlier. And his name is Adikeshava Das Adhikari. Dr. O.B.L. Kapoor. And at one time in their friendship, Dr. Kapoor was studying for his PhD. And Prabhupada gave him a tonic, which he said would be very useful for the heavy mental exertion he was under studying for his PhD. And it worked. It was very effective for Dr. Kapoor. But they had a light-hearted conversation one time where Dr. Kapoor said to Prabhupada, who wasn't initiated at that point, and he would affectionately refer to him as Abai Babu, I wish that, thank you, that tonic you gave me was wonderful, but I wish you would share with me the tonic that you yourself take. And Prabhupada asked, and what tonic is that? And Dr. Kapoor said, the tonic whereby you have developed so much love for Krishna, the Krishna Prema tonic. And Prabhupada said, I'm still working. I actually have the formula for that tonic. I don't have it yet, but I do know the formula. And Dr. Kapoor said, well, if you know the formula and it's not a secret, would you mind sharing it with me? And Prabhupada said, certainly. Trinadapi sanichena, torodapi sahishnina, amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. More humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, completely devoid of all sense of false prestige, not expecting any honour for oneself, but willing to honour everyone else. In this way, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. I think it's verse 3 of the Shikshastakam prayers, very famous. And Prabhupada also said to Dr. Kapoor on that occasion that I'm actually planning to take this tonic all over the world at some future point in time. And of course that did happen. We're all taking the tonic. It's a wonderful tonic. So, and many other delightful pastimes we've read and heard over the years. At one time, Prabhupada shared that he was approached by some criminals who wanted to use Prabhupada's license for purchasing opium. In India and everywhere else, you had to be a registered, certified pharmacist, a manufacturer of pharmaceutical products, in order to get a license to, as I'm sure we all know, opium is very powerful for curing pain. So, and they offered Prabhupada a lot of money, but being supremely dharmic and ethical person, Prabhupada's not interested. Take your money. And he also shared on one occasion that one astrologer did say that in his previous life Prabhupada was a doctor and that he was sinless. So, and he also joked on one occasion that arsenic is tasteless, but how does anybody really know for sure? So, and I can remember in 1978 doing a little bit of shopping in Loy Bazaar, and some of Prabhupada's original products that he manufactured were still on sale in Loy Bazaar. Days liniment, it was there. Very good shelf life. Long expiry. But of course, whether it was still, but as we all know, as Prabhupada became world famous, and it was very good for the merchants in Loy Bazaar to put up nice photographs of Prabhupada, and it was very good for business. So maybe some had some old liniment there, but Prabhupada, very handsome young man with big moustache and days liniment. So, and of course we know that when Mahaprabhu returned from Gaya to Navadvip after taking initiation from Srila Ishwarapuri, he was a transformed personality. He wasn't like he was before he went to Gaya. He would swoon at the name of Sri Krishna. He was crying profuse tears. His family members were very concerned for his health and well-being. Mother Sachi and the Lord's consort, Vishnupriya, and other close family members and friends were very concerned. What has happened to Nimai? So Murari Gupta was called, and Murari Gupta was the childhood school friend of Mahaprabhu. By that time in their lives, Murari Gupta had become a qualified Ayurvedic physician. So he examined Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he revealed that actually the disease that Nimai has is a very nice disease. In fact, I want the same disease. It's not, as you are thinking, a wind disorder, that the life airs are somehow or other not in order. Not at all. He is actually manifesting all of the ecstatic symptoms of love for Krishna. And of course, soon after that time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or at that time, the Lord started to manifest his real identity as Krishna Chaitanya. So, this is, of course, for those that are interested, and not many are, but we see that this is the unique contribution of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There are many saints in many different religious orders in the history of the world. But when we go deep into the reading this Chaitanya Charitamrita and other approved, authorized biographies of Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Bhagavad and so on, we see there's no comparison to the religious fervour that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu manifested to the world and freely distributed to everyone. It's interesting that we know at the beginning of this age, Kali Yuga, there were 80,000 sages assembled at Naimisharanya, and they were good-hearted sages, and they wanted to somehow or other stem the tide of the age of Kali. So they thought, we'll do a 1,000-year sacrifice. But we need some help. So a small group were deputed to go to Brahmaloka. Shaunaka Rishi was the head. So they went to Lord Brahma and they asked for some help in performing this 1,000-year yajna. And Brahmaji said, yes, I will certainly help. I will send one disc to Naimisharanya, empowered chakra, which will definitely assist in your performance. So the sages returned, and yes, however it worked in those days, but somehow or other, intergalactic internet, the sages got word that this disc was hurtling towards Earth at quite a rate of knots. So they became very concerned, and they approached the consort of Lord Shiva, Durga, and said, can you somehow or other slow this disc down, because if it hits the Earth planet too speedily, then it's going to be disastrous. It could be like a tsunami, earthquake, flooding, and so on. So that happened, but still the disc hit the Earth in the vicinity of Naimisharanya at such force that it penetrated deep, deep, deep into the Earth. So in the 18th century, the British army engineers, they heard of this myth, this legend that there was a lake at Naimisharanya which was bottomless. So that's where the chakra had connected with planet Earth and gone deep, deep, deep. So, being eager to discredit what they considered mythology, these army engineers came to Naimisharanya, and they brought some equipment with them. They brought a small boat, and it had a drum on it with a chain, metal chain, that was 1.5 miles long, with a weight on the end. And they rowed out onto what is known as Chakratirtha, and they unravelled the full 1.5 miles of the chain into the lake, and they didn't reach the bottom. So they wound up their chain and quietly left Naimisharanya, never to return. So, of course, there are wonderful pastimes throughout the Bhakti Shastras, which we relish because we have developed a little bit of Shraddha, hopefully a lot of Shraddha, in the existence of the Supreme Lord, based on Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. Krishna is famous as Triadish, means he is the Lord of many important groups of 3, such as the 3 Purusha avatars, Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu and Sirodakshaya Vishnu. And similarly, the 3 Guna avatars, Vishnu, Shiva and Lord Brahma, and the 3 modes of material nature that they ultimately control, goodness, passion and ignorance. He also has his three principal energies: internal, external, and marginal. And of course the list goes on and on. Quite often when we're reading or hearing, we'll delight, oh, there's another one. Triadish, the Lord of the Threes. And Bhakti is so nice. Prabhupada joked one time that his Western students only had to do one of the two things that Krishna requests in his famous text 66 of the 18th chapter, Sarvadharman Parityagya Mam Ekam Sharanam Braja. Just give up all other forms of religiosity and surrender unto me. Prabhupada joked, you only have to surrender because most of you have already given up all other forms of religiosity, which is true. Apart from some pious persons from Indian background who may have been trained nicely by their parents and grandparents to worship different other devatas, most of us had become, if we had any religious upbringing at all, was very scant, and quite often we became very disillusioned at an early age. So all we have to do is surrender. And of course some of us have had an inclination to do that, and we've found it's been very wonderful results. And where Krishna leaves off in that verse in Bhagavad Gita, very early in the first chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Vyasadeva picks up the same theme again in his famous Dhamma Kaitavotra Paramo Nimatsaranam Satam, completely rejecting all religious systems which are materially motivated. This Bhagavat Purana propounds the highest truth, which is readily understandable by those devotees who are pure in heart. And of course, another prominent theme of Vyasadeva throughout Srimad Bhagavatam is that there's no need for Vaishnavas, for Krishna's devotees, to endeavour for jnana or renunciation separately. They come as automatic byproducts of practicing bhakti. Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayotitaha. That causeless knowledge and detachment automatically come for one who serves and worships Lord Vasudeva Krishna. Automatic byproducts. And we learn a lot from nature in the sense that in the animal kingdom we have creatures like the cats, either small or big cats, and we also have monkeys. And cats carry their kittens in their mouths. So the baby kittens or cubs, the lioness, transports them from one place to another by carrying them. Kittens don't have to do anything, they just carry. Monkeys, baby monkeys, they have to hang on, either underneath the mother or on their back. And that can be quite perilous. They really have to hang on tight, as the mother often, to evade danger, has to jump from one branch of a tree to another like that. So they hold on. In the other systems of yoga, like jnana and chaga, renunciation, they are pretty much exclusively effort-based. We have these two things in life. There's effort and there's grace. But in jnana yoga, even karma yoga and chaga, renunciation, the yogi has to make all the effort, pretty much. Ultimately, Krishna's sanctioning, but they have to perform the severe austerities. They have to study the Shastras in order to, when they have to meditate and control the mind and control the senses with great effort. But bhakti is described as primarily grace-based. But as the question is sometimes posed, and I know you all know the answer, so I won't ask it, but we still have to do both. No one else can chant our 16 rounds minimum of the Maha Mantra control our minds and senses, rise early, keep clean, attend classes, render some devotional service, and so on. We have to make that effort. But still, profoundly, we refer to our Gurudevs as His Divine Grace, because the grace of the divine couple, Sri Radha and Krishna, is coming down in the unbroken chain of disciplic succession, Guru Parampara. And if we're serious and sincere, then we make spiritual advancement by their mercy. And we can also see how nice bhakti is, in the sense that we don't have to perform very severe austerities. A little austerity, but nothing compared to the austerity of the Tyagis and the Jnanis and so on. And we can get some understanding of that, thinking about dress, in the sense that Prabhupada said we should eat to please ourselves and dress to please others. So we have many festivals in Krishna consciousness. We all know, I think Sunday feast tomorrow, very ecstatic. Nice Nrsimha Chaturdasi just a week ago, and so many more festivals coming up in May. And for devotees who like to dress up, we dress up on festival occasions. Uddhava would often, Krishna's most confidential advisor in Dwarka, Krishna would be offered so many gorgeous, opulent articles of clothing and jewelry. Sometimes he would wear them for a while, and then he would give them, he would say, Uddhava, this would look really nice on you. And he would pass on an item. So much so that when Uddhava came to Vrindavan, at first, the residents of Vrindavan mistook him for Krishna, because he was the same complexion also, swarthy, even though Uddhava took his birth in the middle part of India, Madhya Pradesh, where persons, especially high-class Brahmins and Kshatriyas, generally of quite fair complexion, Uddhava, because of his lifetimes of devotion to Krishna, had that same swarthy complexion. And he was wearing items that only Krishna, who was the Lord of Dwarka, very opulent clothing. So he was mistaken at first. But then when he got closer, the residents could see, oh, it's Uddhava, it's not Krishna. So, and similarly, we have the whole pastime. Krishna can never be accused of not being innovative, in the sense that sometimes the Lord makes a radical departure from the so-called norm, in the sense that he convinced his father, Nanda Maharaj, and the other elders of Vrindavan to completely forego the yearly Yajna to Indra. And he gave very good arguments. And they tried to counter those arguments, Nanda Maharaj, but my dear son, we will certainly do this sacrifice that you're proposing to the cows, the Brahmins in Govardhana Hill at some future point in time. But today, we've assembled all this paraphernalia for worshipping Indra, so we should just go through with this. But Krishna was adamant, no, take all this same paraphernalia, but just worship the cows, Govardhana Hill, and the Brahmins. And they agreed to do that. And furthermore, Father, let everyone dress up in their best clothing, put on their best jewelry, and with the cows in front, let us all circumambulate Govardhana Hill. And that's exactly what happened. So, and of course we do that, and it's delightful. And we also have the other festival where Krishna and Balaram at a certain age were entrusted with the responsibility of taking care of not just the small calves as they'd been doing, but the big cows, Gopastami. So another wonderful festival. And I think our ladies on those festival days even like to dress up as cowherd boys. So many wonderful festivals are there. And we heard nicely the other day from Ramai Maharaj of the dramatical incident when the dacoit son of a Brahmana became mesmerized by the opulent jewelry that Lord Nityananda was wearing and wanted to steal that jewelry. And because Nityananda Prabhu and his Dwadasa Gopals, 12 cowherd associates from Goloka Vrindavan, would dress very nicely and even wore costly jewelry, and their Sankirtan parties travelling all the length and breadth of Bengal was so attractive, just like a Rath Yatra festival. So, and there's an interesting story I heard only recently. One sannyasi during Prabhupada's time went to another sannyasi's room in Vrindavan, and this sannyasi had small deities of Gaur Nitai that he used to travel with and worship. And on this particular morning, he dressed his deities as sannyasis in saffron cloth, even had little madanga and kartals and dandas there. And the other sannyasi came back and said, Prabhupada, I just went and saw so-and-so Maharaj's Gaur Nitai deities, and he dressed them as sannyasis. And Prabhupada chuckled. He said, we don't like to see Lord Caitanya dressed like that. That was all he said on. Because we prefer, Prabhupada said, we prefer to see Nimai Pandit, the Prince of Nadia, dressed very gorgeously as Brahman. Young men would do in those days simply, but very gorgeously, with beautiful golden dhoti and chadar, with long hair tied up, and tulsi beads and beautiful udva purna, tilak, Vaishnava tilak, perhaps some sandalwood paste there also. So we can contrast that with how those of us who have been to India no doubt have seen many renunciants, very austere yogis and chagis wearing very little, performing great austerities, and there may be some form of attractiveness there. Renunciation certainly is a quality, but compared to seeing devotees very nicely dressed, Vaishnavas, it's that for many is much more attractive, especially when we go out in public on Harinams and so on. Even though we look different enough as it is, but when devotees are dressed nicely, then that's certainly very attractive. Back to medicine just for a moment. It's said that at a certain point in our bhakti practice, medicine should become our food. We often hear, and Krishna says, spiritual life in the beginning it's bitter, like poison, practicing. But in the end, it's like nectar. Whereas material sense enjoyment in the beginning is just like nectar, but as one becomes older, it can become very distasteful. And in the matter of eating, we know that if you're hungry and you eat a good meal, then your hunger is satisfied. You enjoy the sensation of eating and your body becomes nourished. So bhakti practice is like that. In the beginning we may be very much suffering in this material world, but then by the kindness of the devotees our suffering is mitigated. And we actually come to realize who we are. Just trying to think of my many other points here. What is most relevant? We've just got a couple of minutes here. Hare Krishna. It's pertinent. There's one other pastime of Mahaprabhu where it's mentioned in the 17th chapter that on one occasion a Brahmin came for kirtan, nocturnal kirtans every night at Srivas Thakur's house. The door was locked. The Brahmin, who was known to be very critical and of harsh temperament, he was very upset. He couldn't get in. The door was locked. So the next day he saw Mahaprabhu and he complained bitterly to him that, I tried to come to your kirtan last night, but I couldn't get in. So therefore I'm cursing you to be bereft of all material enjoyment. And Mahaprabhu was very happy to get that curse. He experienced great jubilation because that was part of his pastime of appearing, and after just 24 years of householder life, accepting the renounced order of life. So Mahaprabhu was not at all, he took that as a great blessing. So just as Prabhupada also sometimes joked that Narad Muni was cursed on at least a couple of occasions, possibly 3. Twice by Daksha, because Narad Muni had preached to Dakshas in total, 10,000 and another 1,000 sons, 11,000 sons, to forego household life and become renunciants when Daksha's principal service was to populate the universe at the beginning of time. So he wasn't very impressed with Narad, and he cursed him that you won't be able to stay in any one place for very long. And then again, Narad Muni was cursed by old age personified, Jara, that he also would not be able to stay because Narad refused her marriage proposal. Jara was an elderly lady and not particularly attractive. No one wanted to marry Jara. And when Narad respectfully refused her, she cursed him. So Narad has this curse upon him, just as Lord Caitanya was also cursed by this particular harsh Brahmin to be bereft of all material happiness. So Narad also continually travels. He's always popping up here, popping up there. So Prabhupada joked that he felt he must have been cursed by some of the parents of some of his disciples because he also had to travel continuously. He couldn't stay in any one place for very long. But Prabhupada took that as a benediction also, that he could share Krishna's glories far and wide. That said, Prabhupada also had many, many parents of his disciples who were extremely grateful to Prabhupada for saving their sons and daughters, and wrote Prabhupada wonderful letters of appreciation. He used to come and personally meet with him, even though their initial thoughts were apprehensive and disappointment with their sons and daughters for joining the Krishna consciousness movement. Wonderful case in point is, of course, His Holiness Giriraj Swami, who joined in 1969, came from a very wealthy family. His father was a lawyer and then became a judge. He's fabulously wealthy, and his young son joined the Hare Krishna movement. Not at all happy with Prabhupada. But eventually he came and met Prabhupada with his wife in Bombay, and was very, very impressed. The famous story is there of, in the early days, offering his son an open cheque, $1 million. Son, you leave this Hare Krishna movement, here's a cheque for $1 million. A lot of money in those days, still a lot of money in these days. And he said, his father, Giriraj Swami's father, that what impressed him a great deal about Srila Prabhupada was Prabhupada's organisational abilities and his ability to get along with everybody. And he really admired that about Prabhupada. And he was a successful man. So I better stop there, everyone. Is there a quick question or comment?
Thank you, Prabhu. A quick comment and a question.
Please.
Just on you spoke about grace and effort. Sometimes the analogy is given that the conditioned soul is in a deep well, the spiritual master is supposed to rope down, but you have to hold on to it. So that's the effort. So the question is, you relayed that discussion between Srila Prabhupada and the doctor, and he was asking for the formula. Srila Prabhupada quoted that verse on humility. So I was wondering if you could, because that's also brought up in a lot of the scripture, this utter humility, and apparently you can't enter the spiritual realm unless you have it. It's a prerequisite. So can you maybe say something? What is, because Srila Prabhupada could have told him to chant Hare Krishna or read Bhagavad Gita, but he quoted that particular verse. So what is the significance of humility in relation to spiritual perfection?
Well, you're absolutely right, and it's Sanatana Goswami Dainya, absolute humility, mentioned in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. That's the quality everyone must have, and the complete absence of false ego. It's significant that it's called false ego. There is real ego, and that's our identity of who we are, and that's Gopi Bhatu Parakamalo Dasa 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 Anudas. So, of course, I can't really speak from a realised platform, though I can try to remember the Trinata piece in each verse, and we do recite it every morning and try to live it, not get upset. But yeah, it's vital. It's Prabhupada said it to Dr. Kapoor, Sanatana Goswami's mentioned it. It's throughout our Bhakti Shastras, humility, pridelessness. It's there, and yeah, so that's about all. Anyone want to add anything more? Any realizations on humility? Rupa knows more about these things, so exciting to see. Yeah, and the new magazine. It's got its pride of place right outside the temple room there, and nice to see in both Byron and Nimbin over the last couple of days, devotees. I saw Bhakti and Melissa out there giving out our wonderful new little invitation. So book distribution, going out on Harinam, all the activities of Bhakti. Processes heart melting rather than heart breaking, which is material life is heart breaking, whereas Bhakti, it melts the heart, and the symptom of a melted heart is humility. And so many examples are there. Rupa and Sanatan not wanting to debate uselessly with the proud scholar that came to Vrindavan, had a document going here and there, challenging all the pundits. If he defeated them, it was increasing his false prestige as a great... Rupa and Sanatan were so busy translating books, excavating lost holy places, establishing deities and so on. They said, give us your document, we'll sign it. Now on your way, fellow. But when their nephew, Jiva, heard about this, he was most indignant that his two great uncles had... So he agreed to debate with the scholar and so soundly defeated him that proud scholar left Vrindavan never to return. So many stories like that. Nishringa Kvavachi, you want to make a comment? You good? Okay. All right, they're singing the song over there, everyone. Thank you very much. Jai Sri Caitanya Caritamrita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Premanandi.